Part 4, Halloween, 1975.
"Do you know," James says, tugging at the white curls sprouting from beneath his nostrils for the upteenth time, "it's a marvel old Dumbledore gets anything done, with all the itching and the tangling and the getting caught on things." "Well, maybe he uses something other than spirit gum to keep his whiskers on," Sirius suggests. "Also, you know, he is ageless and wise. These may be obstacles he's learned to master. Hurry up, lad, we're going to be late for our own party." "Well, whatever. I'm trying, you know. This is achoo!" James sniffs, wipes his nose on the elaborate sleeve of his costume, and regards it with disgust. "I think maybe I'm allergic. Well, if it makes you feel better, you look terribly handsome." Sirius favors his old best friend with a winning smile, pulls down his immense hat, and flutters his eyelashes. "I've always had a thing for older men." "Oh my, Minerva," James says in a passable imitation of Dumbledore's sparkly baritone. "I don't know whether that's appropriate interest-staff conversation." Sirius cackles lecherously and slaps his bum, and then, on the contrary, says a faintly amused and much richer version from in front of them. "I encourage all forms of flattery from my underlings." Albus Dumbledore has an uncanny habit of appearing for the tail ends of the bawdiest conversations, or manage to be standing just behind you the minute you mention his name. Behind the half-moon glass of his glasses, his eyes are very blue. James attempts to scoop his jaw up from the floor and hopes against hope. That's another McGonagall costume, and not actually McGonagall with her arm in the headmaster's. The stern cough and well-considered flicker of amusement signal the worst has indeed happened. "They do say," Professor McGonagall murmurs, "that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery." James' eyes dart to Sirius. They've known each other for long enough to communicate wordlessly. Eyebrow twitches, lip quakes, a flash of teeth, a nervous tug of the earlobe, a scratch to the side of the nose. To anyone else, they're just fidgety boys. To James and Sirius, they have just had a lengthy conversation extending far beyond their current dilemma. James rubs underneath his nose, disturbing the silvery white whiskers. "Don't do anything stupid, Sirius." Sirius scratches behind his ear. What could possibly make things worse than right now? James presses his teeth to his lower lip, beard shifting ticklishly over his chest. "Just don't do anything stupid, Sirius, and don't say anything stupid either." Sirius rearranges the spectacles on his nose, nudging them into a more severe resting place. "Sorry, it is good as done already." James toys with the hem of his Dumbledore's robes. "Pucker." Sirius brushes his thumb against the corner of his mouth, back straight into familiar preem posture. "And how much virus did you think we should sneak for later?" James wrinkled his nose. "Better make it butterbeer." A cough on the motionless pair in front of them summons their attention forward again. Sirius flicks his fingers through the front of his hair. "Show time!" "Professor McGonagall!" he exclaims, bringing to bear all warmth and suavity that his good breeding and fortunate genetics had given him, and trying to ignore the little utter panic in his voice. "You know, I thought this night couldn't get any more beautiful, and then you stepped around the corner." There's an explosive little noise from James. Minerva McGonagall regards him impassively over the top of her spectacles, but the side of her mouth twitches. "Mr. Black, that is, I hardly know what to say." "Say I do, Professor! I shall never give up until you accept me!" Sirius cries. He has quite the nature from dramatics, dropping onto one knee, sweeping the battered black hat of his head. He has always been good at this, at wild theatricals and mad improvisation, things that would be impertinent and stupid from anyone else but from him, and he knows it isn't just conceit, are charming and often mesmerizing. It's all to do with confidence, he reminds himself. "You are the only woman who has ever managed to hold my complete attention. I can't stop thinking about you. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I do nothing but pine and steal your clothing." I was under the impression that I had never even held your partial attention for more than half an hour. McGonagall raises her chin slightly, the corner of her severe mouth twitching more energetically than ever. "Oh no!" Sirius breathes rapturously. On an insane whim, he grabs her hand. McGonagall shoots a glare at Dumbledore, who shrugs. Always innocence beneath the faint smell of lemon. "Professor, If ever I seem distant in your class, I'm probably dreaming of our future life together, frolicking by the ocean in the sands of Tahiti, skiing hand in hand down the mighty Alps, feeding adorable orphans in the slums of Bombay. The resemblance is absolutely breathtaking, says Dumbledore, and Sirius notices with a faint glow of triumph that his shoulders are shaking. Really, Minerva, it's like watching you be propositions by your own twin. Well, I'm hardly observing any kind of effort from your evil doppelganger, says McGonagall, who now, to Sirius's delight, has a pink blush staining the tops of her cheeks. Really, it's like he doesn't even care. My counterpart, James sighs most gravely, has already used every poetic turn of phrase the book has to offer. How can I, choking upon my own beard, hope to compete with his protestations of love undying until the end of time? Dumbledore makes a sound like choking. But, James continues, the war is not over even if the battle is done. Falling to his knees, praying to whatever gods of mischief that might actually give a Bundibund that he doesn't trip over the troublesome beard, his eyes focus myopic and wildly passionate upon Dumbledore's chuckling face. The reaction is one of surprise, shock, truly divine from all witnesses. A crowd is gathering which only fuels each action, the next more ludicrous than the one before. I'm all confused, headmaster. It's like looking into a mirror. Loves to do that, you know, eh? Sirius explains in a stage whisper, does it all the time, like heaven for him, heaven on earth. And seeing for the first time the truth. James clasps his hands to his chest, nearly loses them in the tangle of white hair, but manages to extricate them with innate dignity. We had no other way than to pull all our eggs in one basket, and aren't we handsome? What you say about the sincerest form of flattery? Sirius bats his eyelashes and hoped that our desperation would not go unnoticed. Professor McGonagall bites back a snort of laughter that threatens to shatter her calm-like glaze over crème brûlée. Dumbledore's cheeks are rosy with suppressed amusement. I was not aware, he murmurs, the calmest poker face of them all, despite the ever-present twinkle in his eye, that we taught play-acting in our institution. Oh, no, Professor, we are in earnest, James protests. We are so in earnest that it is very painful, Sirius agrees. Painfully earnest, James confirms. In fact, we'd best have off from classes Monday to recover. Sirius elbows him violently. I straight ahead. Don't push it. James pokes out his tongue as discreetly as possible. The professor look at each other. How painful exactly would you classify your earnestness? Dumbledore inquires archly. I merely ask to ascertain whether we should release you without charges or have you locked up for your own good. Painful enough to merit euthanasia? McGonagall mutters, and the headmaster treads serenely on her foot. The onlookers cackle, and Sirius spares a moment to wish them dead before barreling on. Oh, terribly painful, he says, very sincerely, like having one's foot gnawed off by a flubberworm. But of course no physical pain, no description I could conjure without possibly compare to the pangs of love that I know can never be. He springs to his feet, still clutching McGonagall's hand, hoping that the movement will catapult him into inspiration. For, painful though it is, beg the favour of a woman who can never deign to love me in return. 'Tis better to have loved and lost, and so on. He fumbles, opens his mouth, closes it. James eyes on Ian, slowly growing panic. Come on, Padfoot, do something! And finally thinks, to hell with it. Sirius launches himself forward and kisses his head of house full in the mouth. McGonagall makes a strangled nose and flails at him. Their hats knock together. So do their spectacles. Sirius decides after a panic-filled moment that his point is made perhaps too well, yanks himself back and gazes ardently at her. She looks, he thinks, with great admiration, rather magnificent. Bright red, helpless with confusion and probably rage, and yet altogether in possession of her dignity. I'm sorry, Professor. I just couldn't hold back any longer. I love you, and it tears me up inside. Considering the deed done, Sirius grabs James' wrists and flees down the hall, pursued by roars and laughter and a shriek of "Mr. Black! 12,000,000 points from Gryffindor!" floating down the corridor after them. "I've got it!" Sirius says around a mouthful of butterbeer. Remus ducks just in time. "Me, last week after I ran out of towels." "No," Remus says. "Good one, though," Peter encourages. "Don't give up now." "No, really, Moony, this time I've got it." Sirius blows the bubble the size of his head and green like the back of a Luna moth. When it pops and sticks all over his neatly perched glasses, he manages, "That bloke who said Eureka!" That was Euclid. Sirius gets the feeling the only reason Remus hasn't throttled him is all the chocolate is placating him. Euclid did not wear a toga. "Bugger," Sirius says. "Me when I'm drunk? I've done some pretty No. I could swear I was like that one time when No. I'm not giving up." Sirius tries to look nonchalant while glancing eagerly out of the window. James is rearranging his beard somewhere, and Peter has gone off to be sick in the bathroom, and it's almost time to head off to the shack for the night. A yearly ritual, and therefore holy. Already the clouds are the spectral Hallows Eve color, yellow and grey and silver, and shifting across darkness into darkness. Of course not, no. Remus reaches up to settle his sleeves more neatly behind his ears. "It's on the tip of my tongue," Sirius insists. "So some that gum from earlier." Remus motions with his thumb, and Sirius sucks it off hurriedly. "Just so long as you don't tell me. You have until morning." Remus smiles the grim smile of a much beleaguered entity. "Baka," Sirius says. "Ooh, I've got a good one." "Is it the one about the nearly headless ghost? Because that one isn't good, Mortail." "Shut up, this is a good one. It's about—" "Don't tell us what it's about, just tell the story." "Righto, so once upon a dark and stormy night, this kid named Mark. His mom says to him, 'Mark, go down to the butcher's and get us a Shrake's knife for our liver that we're having for supper tonight.'" "Ew, Shrake's liver? What kind of a mother is this woman?" "I like Shrake's liver." "Well, yes, you are a dark, inhuman creature. Who knows what all you like?" "You know, I do find myself developing a strange craving for human flesh." "Shut up and listen to the story. You two have no respect. Honestly, cannons." So down she goes. He goes to the butcher's, and there's the liver. Oh, wait, his mom's only given him 7 sickles. I forgot that bit. So he goes and he says, "How much is the Shrake's liver?" And the butcher says, "It's 7 sickles, but we've also got all these pumpkin pastries on sale for 7 sickles as well." Why is the butcher selling pumpkin pastries? His wife makes them. Anyway, so Mark goes, "Well, all right," because he loves pastries. So he buys them with the money and he starts home. Then just as he's leaving, he remembers that his mom asked him for a liver. He knew that though, right? I mean, he was just asking about the price of Shrake's liver. Presumably, he knew he was supposed to buy Shrake's liver. He was forgetful, Sirius. Do shut up. Yeah, shut up. Anyway, luckily at this point he passes an undertaker's. And outside the undertaker's, there's an open coffin with an old witch inside. Ew! In the sun and everything? Is this kind of a pub sign, corpses within style of thing? No, it's just a sample. A sample? A sample corpse? It's a muggle undertaker, I don't know. Anyway, just then Mark has a brilliant idea, so he gets out his wand and he cuts out the old lady's liver. Ew. Walter, this is a vile story, but exciting in a cannibal kind of way. Stop looking at me like that. Anyway, he cuts out the liver and he takes it home and his mom fries it up for dinner, and it's the most delicious thing they've ever eaten. And yet they don't suspect it's not Shrake's liver. He knows it's not Shrake's liver, idiot. He's just stole it. But you said he's forgetful. You lot are the worst audience in the world. They eat it up and then the sun sets. Because they ate the liver? No, because it's night time. The sun goes down and Mark and his mom go to bed. And then they wake up. He wakes up and he hears this thumping, thump, thump, thump. Oh, no, wait, he doesn't. He hears a voice from outside, and it says, Mark! Mark! I'm outside, I want my liver back! It's a talking shrike! He's serious, you're not allowed to talk anymore. Please, you two. So Mark is terrified, obviously, and so he runs and he hides in the closet, yelling for his mom, but there's no answer. So he's hiding there in the dark. Who's breathing like that? Fuck off, Sirius, you aren't funny at all. Anyway, so as he's hiding there, and he hears a creak, and then the same voice says, Mark! Mark, I'm inside, I want my liver back! He totally freezes, not even breathing, not moving at all, and then, now is when he hears thump, 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 and the voice goes, Mark! Mark, I can see you! I want my liver back! And the door to the cupboard is flung open. Sweet Jesus, ouch! What? James? I could swear I just felt something. Claws. Sort of serious. God, I almost had a coronary. What's outside the cupboard? Well, no one knows. But when the neighbors came in the next day, they found the bodies of Mark and his mom, and they both had their stomachs and their livers torn out. Ooh, lovely. That's a nice one, Wormtail. But so wait, actually, we do know what it was, right? I mean, it was the old lady. Black, you are determined to ruin everything. I think he should be beaten. Too right he should. Pillow, Mr. Prongs? Thank you very much, Mr. Wormtail. No, not the costume. My stockings will get runs in there. Oh, no. On the white folds of fabric tugging across Remus's lap, the book rests, a permanent fixture of his life. The title is worn away with age and time, and the binding cracked. He has his right pointer finger stuck into the center to keep the page. Just below, where his thumb rests, the round way lettering is just legible. Poe. It is one of Remus's irrational lifelong dreams to read Poe to his friends while they are actually paying attention. Urge, get off! You've beaten me, all right? You win! Ow! All right, Remus, it's your turn. Do you have one of those Muggle stories again? Those aren't scary at all. Muggle stories are never as scary as Wizarding ones. I don't have to read it, you know. Well, I was only saying. Go on, Moony, read it. Only if you're sure it won't bore you. Come on, Remus, you know what I meant. Well, all right. The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. Didn't he write that Raven poem? Nevermore and all? Shh! Right, sorry. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed them, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I had all things in the heaven and the earth. I had many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken! And observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. Doesn't sound calm to me. Put a sock in it, Sirius. Sock in, put. Go on, Moony. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so by degrees, very, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Sounds like that. Well, right, you remember, don't you, Prongs, that moody fellow? Handy suck. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. and every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, that no light shone out, and then I thrusted my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so as wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye, and this I did for 7 long nights, every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who had vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone and inquiring how he has passed the night. So you see, he would have been very a profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I had looked upon him where he slept. So what happened then? Well, he's telling us, isn't he, Peter? He's telling about a mad stalker is what he's telling us. Well, he's trying to tell us. Upon the 8th night I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph, to think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. You know what that means. Ow! That hurt! I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he had heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, with thick darkness, for the shutters were close fastened through fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon the thin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For the whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. What's a death watch in the wall? Shh! You're the one to talk serious. Well, it's interesting now. Presently I had a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief, oh no! It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well, many a night. Just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo. The terrors that distracted me. Is Batty? You can say that again. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but he could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor, or it is merely a cricket which has made its single chirp. I know how that feels. Ow! Stop throwing that!" Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him, and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. Ooh. When I had waited a long time very patiently without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a little, a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray like the thread of the spider shot from out the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow of my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the sense? Now I say there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beatings of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. Definitely mad old Moody. This poor fellow must have known him. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am never, so I am, and now at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, saw a strange noise, this exciting me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still, but the beating grew louder, and I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done, but for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there for many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. Couldn't do that to Moody, though, could you? If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer, when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatsoever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. Ha! When I had made an end of these labours, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had now I had to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbour during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled. For what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search. Well, I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure and undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt now I grew very pale. But I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound. Much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officer had not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I rose and argued about trifles, in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men. But the noise steadily increased. Oh, God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards, but the noise arose all over and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard it not? Almighty God, no, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt I must scream or die. And now again, hark! Louder, louder! Louder, louder! Villains, I shrieked, dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here it is the beating of his hideous heart. Wow. Yeah. Better than the Raven poem. Oh, yes.
Sirius shivers happily and sprawls his legs carelessly apart, heedless of the skirt. This has got to be his favorite holiday that doesn't involve mistletoe. He and James have had a good run today, and if there's a way to finish it off with a bang, he's going to make sure it happens. There's a chill in the air, their little lanterns are flickering, and the wind skims the wires of the piano. He rubs his arms reflexively for warmth, but grins widely, leaning in toward them so the firelight glows menacingly in the hollows of his face. All right, it's me now. Mwahahaha. Stop that. Sorry. Oh, I suppose you can go, if you must. You won't regret it. So there's this gorgeous girl, right? And she lives with her parents in, oh, say, I don't know. Let's say Surrey. Evans lives in Surrey. I know that, idiot. So this girl, right, this lovely redhead, she lives in Surrey with her parents and her nasty little baby sister and her big black dog, who is her best and favorite companion and with whom she snuggles up to sleep every night, cuddling against him in flimsy nightwear and stroking his big old fuzzy head. Fuck you, Black. What? Don't get shirty, Potter. It's only a story. What's the matter? Are you frightened? No, but you should be. Oh-ho! Someone's not getting into the Halloween spirit. And someone else isn't getting into anything unless it's a bruising. Honestly, the pair of you. I want to hear the story. Serious? Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Mooney. It's nice to know that someone around here still has some respect for the lost art of storytelling. Where was I? Right. So this girl and her dog. You said this bit about 12 separate times. So this one evening, her parents decide to go out for the night, okay? And so they leave this helpless, beautiful girl, 16 years old, alone in the house with her horrible little baby sister. They figure it's all right, because she's got this bloody great dog around to protect her from whatever, and so they just remind her to lock all the doors before she goes to sleep. So out they go, and the girl goes round the house to get all the doors and windows, and she locks them all up, except for there's one in the cellar that won't shut. She's not too worried, though, as it's in the cellar and all. Why doesn't she just charm it shut? Must you ask stupid questions? She's not allowed to do magic outside of school. She's a prefect. It could be extremely damaging. The point is, she goes upstairs, has a little bit of supper, and changes into her nightie, which is very short and terribly flattering. And she curls up on the sofa to go to bed, her slender fingers lightly caressing the dog in its favorite place right between the ears. Don't you even dare talk about Evans like that. James, will you please have some dignity? Put that thing away. You'll have someone's eye out. This isn't about Evans. It's a folklore. Prongs, you're ruining his story. You are, you know, James. But serious, I don't think that you can say something is a folklore, and you have to admit you're being somewhat gratuitous. God's sakes, Mooney. Is anyone going to let me tell this story? I haven't said anything. And for that I am profoundly grateful, Wormtail. When the revolution comes, you will not be eaten. May I go on? Fine, don't let me stop you, you great canine pervert. Thank you. All right, so she drifts off into this peaceful sleep, right? And then about 2 hours later, she wakes up to hear something coming from the bathroom. Drip, drip, drip. I know what that is. You're a sick man, Peter Pettigrew. I meant the tap. Would you lot shut up? So she hears this noise, right? But it's dark. It's about 2 in the morning. And she doesn't want to get up. She's a bit frightened. Anyway, she figures, as our clever Peter has, that it's just the tap leaking, as it does, because this imaginary red-headed girl is not as good in domestic charms as she is in all of her other subjects. So she just kind of wants reassurance. So she sticks her hand over the side of her bed to pet her dog, and it gives her hand a nice reassuring lick because it is a good dog. Padfoot, you are foul and disgusting. This is not about me, James Potter. How many times do I have to tell you? Honestly, Mooney, can we bury him in the floor? No. Why can't you all be quiet? We'll never get to my story like this. The rat has a point. Why can't you all be quiet? Except Mooney, who has kindly refrained from correcting my grammar for at least 30% of this story. And again, my gratitude is boundless. I've not said one word about your grammar. You said I was gratuitous. That has nothing to do with grammar. Do you even know what it means? Shh. Of course I do. Anyway, so, reassured by our loyal pet, she goes back to sleep. She dozes for a while, and then suddenly she's awakened again. Drip, drip, drip. And this time there's another noise, a sound like claws on wood. Scritch, scritch. She's a little bit more frightened now, so she kind of sits up. But it's so dark in the house, and she's too scared and groggy to get out of bed. So again, she puts her hand down for reassurance, and the dog licks it, all protective and sweet, and comforted, she falls back asleep. Then suddenly she's awoken again. This time the dripping is insistent, and the clawing noise is so loud it sounds like it's inside her head. She's terrified, man, so she reaches out her hand, but the dog isn't there. Righto, she thinks. I'll go and have a look at it. It's only a drippy tap. It's not a drippy tap, is it? Shh. Shut up, Peter. So she goes into the bathroom. It's too dark to see anything. Trembling, she reaches for the light, and she fumbles around and finally gets it on. The first thing she sees is her dog tied up inside the towel cupboard, scratching frantically at the door. Scritch, scritch. How is it scratching if it's tied up? Potter, I will kill you. It just is. Christ. So there's the dog, scratching and struggling, and the girl starts to panic. So she turns round slowly, and there, hanging from the curtain rod, is the mutilated body of her sister, dripping blood onto the floor. Drip, drip, drip. And on the wall over the shower, written in blood, she sees, "Humans can lick too, my lovely." Ugh. Wow, brilliant. Thanks, Pete. Bloody disgusting. Nods. You would think so, Prongs, just because it's about Evan getting licked. Ugh, that's disgusting. Don't be such a nonce, Wormtail. And anyway, remember, it's not about Evans. You know, Pads, at first I thought the dog was your little avatar in this story, but now I'm starting to think that maybe you're the murderer. I am not. Good God, Mooney, what are you insinuating? You're just also inordinately fond of licking people. You are, you know. Not helpless 16-year-old girls, well, actually, but not while pretending to be a dog, well, actually. You know, in the version I know, the murderer kills the dog, skins it alive, actually. That's the dripping, and there isn't a sister. Look, Prongs, it's this little thing I like to call artistic license. If you don't like it, tell your own bloody story. Fine, maybe I will. Go on, then. James toys with the end of his long white beard while managing to lounge in his heavy purple robes. Behind him, the rickety bed frame creaks back and forth in the howling Halloween wind. He and Sirius detonated 17 dung bombs at breakfast alone, and 13 of them, an aptly unlucky number, in Snape's socks. The last challenge of the evening is his story before, stuffed on pumpkin pie and too much candy to contemplate, their lanterns snuff out and their dreams divide them. Yeah, what have you got for us, James? More beating hearts and moody eyes and batty po people? The Telltale Heart is a classic, Sirius. Psh, ow! You're just scoffing because you nearly wet down your leg. I saw you. I did not. You did too. You're just as nutty as Poe. It's a classic. You know what's also a classic? The Clabber's Paw. Ooh. Once upon a time. No, that's not right. You can't start a ghost story with once upon a time. All right then. Once upon a stormy night. How's that for you? Much better. Once upon a stormy night, for Sirius's sake, when a family was just setting down to dinner, there came a knock on the door. Will you get it, Mother? The old man who was head of the house, by the way, asked his wife. I'll get it, their only son said, light of their hearts, delight of their home, etc. He opened the door, and there in the doorway stood a weary, grizzled old soldier, wet with the rain and tired with all the traveling he had been doing, what with being a soldier and all. This isn't scary. Well, not yet, so just be quiet and let me tell the story. But you're telling it wrong. You've had your turn. Fine, fine, ruin a perfectly good Clabber's Paw. Go ahead. So the family invited the poor tired soldier in for dinner and a few drinks afterwards. The soldier was fond of his fire whiskey, just like you, Sirius, huh? And after the third glass he warmed up a bit in eye and in story, and on the fourth drink took from his pocket something wrapped up in a handkerchief. Do you see this? He said, holding it up in the candlelight. What is it? Asked the son. The soldier unwrapped it and let fall to the table a grizzled, mangy old Clabber's Paw, mangled from where it had been cut off many, many years ago, though the blood, it still looked fresh. The old woman gasped, and the son was naturally fascinated because it was spiffing cool, and the old man couldn't help but see the glint of its dangerous nails and leaned in a bit closer, as if drawn to it by its curling wicked fingers. Get on with it. The Clabber's Paw's ugly, bloody, right? So the soldier told them that it wasn't just any Clabber's Paw, but one that had been charmed once, long ago, to give 3 people 3 wishes each. It was to test the nature of fate, the soldier said, to see if man could change his own without sending him down the path to destruction. But how do you know all this? The old woman asked, having recovered valiantly. Because, madam, I am the second person to have had his 3 wishes. And did it ruin your life, sir? The old man asked. I will tell you honestly, the soldier replied, that I wish I had never laid eyes on this ugly, bloody Clabber's Paw. There it is, ugly and bloody again. Ow! So before the soldier left, that night he said to the old man, Thank you for your hospitality, good sir. I saw the way you were drawn to the paw over the table. It means, despite your kindness, I must give this clapper's paw, along with its last 3 wishes, to you." The old man was surprised and nervous, but secretly delighted. 3 whole wishes could help his little hut and his failing broomstick business, and he wouldn't fall prey to his fate like the other 2. Besides, he told himself, the soldier was still alive, wasn't he? And he looked fit as a frisbee and all that. However, he decided to ask his wife and his son what they thought about using the wish. "We could use it for something very small," the son suggested. "Just enough to clear us of our debts wouldn't be too much to ask for, and wouldn't we all be happy then?" The old man was delighted with his son's cleverness. What was he doing living with his parents still, eh? A fine, strapping young lad like that. Delighted with his son's cleverness, and so he did exactly as his son suggested. "I wish for 300 galleons to clear us of our debts," he told the clapper's paw, but nothing happened. Talking to a clapper's paw will do that to a man. The next morning there was still no money. The old man shrugged and wondered if perhaps the old soldier had been mistaken and how many people had used the paw before him. He put the paw in his bedside drawer and went down to breakfast. What was he having? Porridge? Disgusting. Should have wished for some eggs and bacon. Later that day, some grave-looking wizards in dark robes showed up at the house. The old woman let them in, a sinking feeling deep in her stomach. "It's your son," the grave wizard said. "There's been an accident. We claim no responsibility, but please accept the small sum of 300 galleons and our condolences to keep the matter quiet." "Oh ho, now that's uncanny." So the old man and the old woman went into a long period of mourning, spending all the money on a grand funeral for their son, which is really ridiculous to me because he's dead anyway, isn't he? And what do they need with a shiny coffin for it if they're just putting it in the ground? Now you're talking some sense, Prongs. And one night, after crying for hours on her pillow, the old woman sat up straight in bed. "Husband," she said, "husband, I have an idea." She scrabbled through the bedside drawer and pulled out the clapper's paw, which was uglier and fouler and more twisted than ever. "I wish for our son back," she said. "I wish for our son to come back to us." The old man was horrified. He knew immediately that, in her grief, his wife had been very nonspecific and thought instantly of their son, rotted and falling to pieces, and with bits of shiny coffin hanging off him too, walking up the lane and smashing the door in. Still, for a time, nothing happened, and they could hear nothing in the darkness but the sound of their own breathing. Just as the old man was finally relaxing, the wind shifted, and the clouds ran over the moon, and an owl began to hoot in a tree outside the window, just like crying they heard it. The sound of the footsteps scraping down the road lifted high in the stillness of the night. The old woman leaped out of bed and ran toward the door, struggling with the locks and the bolt. The old man could do nothing but sit in his bed and clutch at his covers and shudder, and he saw just out the window a disfigured shape stumbling down the road, falling, reaching out, stumbling, grasping with bony fingers, and getting closer and closer and closer, and closer and closer and closer. So the old woman screamed from downstairs, "Husband, help me with the bolt. I can hardly reach it." But the old man couldn't move, the clapper's paw clasped tightly in his hands. What was he to do? The rotted monster that was his son was about to be let in, and his wife was downstairs lifting the bolt with all her might. And there he was, helpless in his bed, rigid with terror and so on, until he realized the paw had one more wish left. Holding the paw high above his head, he cried out, "I wish my son were back in the grave," just as the old woman threw up the bolt and pulled open the door, and there was nothing outside but the falling leaves rattling at the door. Sirius lies totally still, staring sightlessly into the dark, shadowy peak of the shack's ceiling. He can't move. It's not an issue of comfort. It's an issue of things that are waiting in all the hidden corners. Horrible, hulking dead things that are just drooling for him to expose a foot or a finger so they can strip to the flesh from his bones, and thump. Sirius sits bolt upright, clutching his sheet. The wind whistles eerily through the cracks in the wooden wall. It's never been this dark ever, anywhere, in the history of the world, Sirius thinks. Thump. Prongs, hisses Sirius as quietly as possible, jabbing a thumb into the hulk of cloth that he hopes, oh my God, is still James. Oi, prongs, prongs, are you awake? James lets out a phenomenal snort and flaps onto his back, breathing noisily through his nose like a death rattle. Snoring at a time like this, completely oblivious to doom, which even now thumps closer. Sirius curses and crawls back into his defensive position, gnawing convulsively on his thumbnail. James sleeps like the dead. Oh my God, there'd be no waking him at this particular stage. On other occasions, Sirius has tried everything, up to and including judicious applications of saliva, but it's no use when James is snoring like that. Thump! Christ! Sirius launches himself frantically at his last hope, which is Remus, huddled comfortably against the far wall. Moony! Moony! You awake? Moony? Says the bundle unmuffledly. Go away. No, says Sirius. Something is thumping. Wake up, Moony! 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 Thump! Remus groans low and long and rolls over onto his side. His face comes out of the carnivorous shadows into a brief slant of moonlight. Sirius is relieved to see Remus's nose, mouth, cheekbones, and chin are all still intact. Nothing has eaten him. Nothing has eaten him yet. Remus rubs blearily at his eyes. What's the matter? He asks. Time is it? I don't know. Sirius grasps him by the shoulders. Listen, Moony, you've got to just shh, be quiet and listen. But what's going? Sirius clamps his hand over Remus's mouth. Wait for it, he mouths. The silence stretches infuriatingly across the room. It's taunting him, Sirius knows, teasing him, prolonging the agony of just waiting for it. Clouds shift over the moon. The sound of the shack creaking back and forth on unstable foundations is less frightening than the silence it obscures. The silence buried deeper. The silence which is more unbearable the longer it lasts. Sirius can hear his own heart pounding and the steadier beat of Remus's heart against his forearm just speeding up from the sloth of slumber. Thump! Sirius nearly jumps, the floorboards shaking beneath him. There, he hisses. Did you hear it? It's closer now. Moony, it's getting closer. He almost expects Remus to laugh at him, but instead Remus's eyes turn keen and narrow, pupils dilated. He looks wild and uncertain and on edge, predatory or instinctive. This is a late night Moony with all his senses still blurred, his intuition still confused. This is a scenting the air Moony, who reminds Sirius that it isn't always a boy he's friends with, infuriatingly proper and often too reasonable to do anything with. This is a sharp-faced Moony, the color of his eyes more gold than brown, and the hard line of his cheek and his jaw pressed forward, scythe pale in the witching hour. I hear it, Remus says. Thump! It's somewhere near Sirius's left leg now. As if it knows the way to win is to divide and conquer. It's going to come round from behind, Sirius realizes, and it's going to slip between Remus's leg and his own leg, and it's going to get them both before they can warn each other. Outside, a wolf howls. Remus's nose twitches. Thump! I'm not frightened, Sirius insists, out loud, voice rough. Are you? Thump! Remus, say something. It doesn't help to see Remus, stoic in his element, the brittle cut of his jaw to his ear against his neck. Sirius wonders if Remus is afraid of anything but the moon, but decides probably not. Thump! Is it the Shrake's liver? Do Shrake's livers thump? I don't think so. Thump! It can't be the Clabber's paw. That only had 3 people and 3 wishes. Can't be. Thump! Remus, Remus, it's the telltale heart. It's your bloody telltale heart, so do something. Sirius clutches Remus's shoulder, almost feeling the brush of something nameless crawl up against his spine. Thump! It grasps the back of his robes with spindly fingers, and a moment later Sirius opens his mouth in a silent yowl, trying to leap free, but the hand is strong and holds firm, dragging him back down to the floor. For a minute, Sirius doesn't remember hearts don't have hands. It's got me, he groans. Oh God, it's got me with its fingers and... Wait a minute. Thump, Remus says. Sirius considers this new development for precisely 7 seconds, which is how long it takes for his heart to start beating again, and then says with deadly calm, Lupin, you are about to learn the meaning of a thumping. Remus cackles slightly hysterically and tries to wiggle away on his elbows, which is tragically inefficient to someone fleeing the mighty wrath of a black. Sirius grabs him by the ankle, snarls, and launches himself forward to belt Remus round the ear, making the whole shack creak and shudder under them. Ugh, Remus says. You nutter, you'll wake up everyone. Good, then they'll get to see you die, Sirius says. I bite you. He does. Remus makes a noise of indignation, struggles up, and smacks the heel of his hand into Sirius's cheek. It'll be a glorious shining bruise by morning. With a great heave of his shoulders, Remus flips Sirius head over heels and straight into the rickety door. It bursts open, rocking on ancient hinges, and suddenly they're rolling out into the landing. Sirius's knee smashes into the banister. Remus yanks at Sirius's hair. Sirius yelps and flings himself away, and then he abruptly remembers that it's at the top of the stairs. There is a little moment of dread. They glance at each other, and then gravity, as it inevitably does, kicks in. Thump, 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 thump. At the bottom of the stairs, Remus groans at the starry burst of pain in the back of his head. Sirius, sprawled heavy beneath him, lets out all the air in his lungs in one long ugh. For a full minute they lie where they fell, taking inventory of each and every twisted muscle and smashed joint and smarting bone. The little scrapes of skin peeled off their shins, the cracks in their knuckles, the splinters in their rears. Slowly the shack calms, swaying back and forth with almost melodic rhythm, the lullaby of an ancient spell. Am I as heavy as I feel? Remus winces. Heavier, Sirius says. Do you have a splinter in your... A whomping great one, right in my... Sirius says. He shifts, trying to pull his arm free from where Remus's chest has it trapped against the bottom step. Ugh, he says again. Ugh. Remus finds himself rolling, reaching out a shaking arm to steady himself, splayed vertical over Sirius. The smell of wood and candy and the faint tinge of somewhere blood dances through the air. Sirius ventures after a time, having ascertained that he still has most of his limbs, though some of them are either numb or should be numb. How do you know if you're paralyzed? Well, for one thing, you can't move. Remus's voice is inches away and miles off. Sirius forces himself to breathe, pushing down the shaking in his diaphragm, and tries to shift again, at which the whomping great splinter digs gleefully into the back of his thigh. Gah! He says with great feeling, and twists to yank at it. The draft that lifts and scatters the leaves across the rough floorboard nips at his ears, but over him drapes Remus, warm still, a pressing down that is both strangely heavy and strangely comfortable. He looks up and catches Remus's eyes, and for no reason his stomach twitches hotly and he has to blink and catch his breath. I think it's not a splinter. I think it's my wand, he says rather hoarsely, making his voice as light as possible. Can you, off? Remus pauses to contemplate. Can I off, he mutters, as if thinking aloud. Think so, he decides finally, rolling to one side and hitting the floor with an oof of breath and an oof of dust. His face disappears into a cloud of shadow. Sirius can still hear him, breathing, raspy and low, and remember the rise and fall of their chests unevenly together. 1 inch to the left, Sirius murmurs. His laugh is half-hearted as the joke. There's little to laugh about when a chap can hardly move himself below the abdomen, he tells himself. That's why there's no laughter below the ache of pain, and the other ache, intangible, elusive, nameless. He closes his fingers around his wand, pain tracing the lines of his vein all the way up his arm. Broken anything? Twisted my wrist, maybe. Let's have a look. Sirius drags himself forward, a dizzying moment of silence as he reorients his brain to the new angle. Remus has his arm clasped against his chest. Still lying flat, profile still in sharp relief of pale shadow against darker shadow. His fingers dangle unevenly against his elbow. He has the look of a wounded animal, something still impatient but ready to turn wild and snapping. Sirius reaches out, slow, and touches the back of Remus's hand. The back of Remus's hand has nothing to do with his wrist starting to swell and fill the skin around the bone. I'm fine, Remus says. I'm fine. Bollocks, Sirius says sharply. Can you even move your fingers? Remus manages a little gasp of laughter. To be honest, I don't really want to try. Maybe? Sirius hisses in sympathetic pain, catching his lower lip between his teeth. He splays out his fingers, soft against the papery skin of Remus's wrist. The small bones there and the delicate blue veins tracing out underneath. Remus feels the odd heat of his fingertips, searing against the bruise. It's twisted. We should get you back. No, Remus says softly. Wait. Sirius pauses. Against Remus's throbbing wrist, his heart beats through his hand. Remus closes his eyes. He can feel it, deep as the roots of the trees uncoiling. His bones stretching and knitting together, twining. The crack and the ache of healing. Sirius stares at him, uncomprehending. Werewolf thing, Remus says, trying to be easy, but his voice cracks a little in pain. We don't break very easily, and we heal fast. The last muffled crackle as the last small bone shunts itself into place. Remus breathes out, shaky and unsteady, and flexes his wrist, which is still angry red but hardly swollen at all. Sirius blinks and shifts. Remus says, Fixed? Whoa, Sirius says. His eyes are on Remus with strange, warm intensity. The line of their bodies melt together like water. I get it. What? Remus says, unnerved. Get what? You're Aristotle, Sirius explains. Remus's mouth works for a minute before Sirius starts laughing, low and rumbling infectious, which means that Remus starts laughing too, and then he's gasping for breath. And Sirius is twitching like a beached fish, sobbing with laughter, and James and Peter appear at the top of the stairs, rubbing their eyes, with the sound of James shouting, What the hell are you two doing? Remus, with Sirius's steadying hand and gulps of laughter against him, is glad for once that he isn't as good at pretending to snore as James is.